I got it. So the class sequence for this morning is Canto 10, Chapter 5, text number 29. And because we're doing this virtually, I'm not going to try to chant the Sanskrit and have you respond, because it would be too crazy. So I'll just read.
We do every day. Every day we do Sanskrit and
I'll just read it, Mataji. I'll just read the translation. If you allow me to do what I want to do, I'll just read the translation and purport, and then we'll discuss. Shri Narada Uvacha. So, excuse me, Shri Nanda Uvacha. Nanda Maharaj said, "Alas, King Kamsa killed so many of your children born of Devaki, and your one daughter, the youngest child of all, entered the heavenly planets." In case you wondered, I've wondered, how did everybody else besides Kamsa understand what happened with that eighth child of Devaki that became a girl and went into the sky? So, at least outside of Mathura, the message went to Vrindavan. She attained heaven. That's what Nanda is saying. The BBT purport here reads, actually this is Prabhupada's purport. When Vasudeva understood from Nanda Maharaj that the mystery of Krishna's birth and his having been exchanged with Yashoda's daughter was yet undisclosed, he was happy that things were going on nicely, and that refers to verse 23, which we'll go back to and read again because it's important to connect with verse 29. By saying that Vasudeva's daughter, his youngest child, had gone to the heavenly planets, Nanda Maharaj indicated that he did not know that this daughter was born of Yashoda, and that Vasudeva had exchanged her with Krishna. Thus, the doubts of Vasudeva were dispelled. So, a few things. One of those few things is going back to Canto 10, Chapter 1. This is Chapter 5. There was a statement made by Shukadeva Goswami that after the eighth child, there was child number 9. And the child number 9 was Subhadra, a female child. But this particular text 29 of Chapter 5, that hasn't happened yet. In other words, although it's in Chapter 1, this is the distinction between Puranas, one of the distinctions between Puranas and Itihasas. Itihasas follow chronologically. Events follow chronologically. And in the Puranas, they don't necessarily follow chronologically, but transcendentally logically. So, although it's in Chapter 1 that there was a 9th child, a female child, this is only identifying the 8th child, which Nanda understood to be a female child, that was Yogamaya, and Yogamaya, that 8th child, attained heaven. That's one of the points being made here. So with this, and we'll go back to text 23, but already Vasudeva had understood that Nanda Maharaj didn't know, and here it's being confirmed, Nanda Maharaj didn't know that Vasudeva changed his son for Yashoda's daughter. Now, Yashoda didn't know, by Yogamaya's influence and other reasons, she didn't know that she gave birth to a female child, because when she woke up in the morning, there was a male child. And Yogamaya's influence, sometimes it's said she was so exhausted from childbirth at midnight, she didn't even recognize male or female. Different things are said, but Yogamaya covered Yashoda to not know that a female child was born. And Vasudeva knew. Have you ever wondered how these two, Vasudeva and Nanda, were dear friends? Now, how could Vasudeva, please consider, already Kamsa had killed 6 boys, and he's taking his son, child number 8, to the side of Yashoda without saying anything to anybody, and taking the female child, knowing that Kamsa is going to try to kill the female child. They're dear friends. And we'll find, by going back, they're like brothers. They were literally brothers. We'll explore that again. But how is it possible? It's not possible, right? That someone who's your dear friend, you know that you take their child and that there's going to be a murder case going on, and you do it anyways. You can't do that. But he did it. Now, he was instructed by Krishna to do what he did, and so he did. Plus, he had parental affection, natural parental affection, but you have parental affection for your own child so much more than another child, that the other child will sacrifice their life for your child. You can't do that. So he's being conducted from within. In addition to Krishna's instruction, Super Soul is guiding a personality. If you have the qualification to be Krishna's father, you have the qualification to be guided by Super Soul, to do whatever Super Soul wants. And so that's my understanding of why Vasudeva was able to do what he did. But he was concerned. He was concerned whether or not Nanda Maharaj understood that there was a switcheroo. And the reason is that the daughter had been already attempted to be killed, but it was a failure, because you can't kill Yogamaya. So Kamsa may try to kill Krishna. So he wanted that Krishna, his 8th child, or the 8th child of Devaki, was with Nanda Maharaj. He didn't want anybody to know. He didn't want Kamsa to know for sure. But he's now getting confirmation in this verse that Nanda Maharaj didn't know because of the way he's speaking. He did so. I'll read it again. Here's text 29. Nanda's revealing he didn't know that there was a change of his daughter with Vasudeva's son. For the protection of Krishna, that was important for Vasudeva. So he didn't disclose to Nanda. He could have. Guess what, Nanda? And then he could have told them right then, but he didn't. Because he wanted Krishna to be protected. He wanted nobody to know, even his dear, dear, dear friend, and like a brother, Nanda. He didn't tell him. He was so much protective of Krishna. Of course, we can say Yogamaya guided him in that way also. We can say that Super Soul and Yogamaya guided him that way. Here's the verse. Nanda Maharaj said, "Alas, King Kamsa killed so many of your children born of Devaki, and your one daughter, the youngest child of all, entered the heavenly planets." Now, notice there's no mention of child number 7, but that's okay, because the common understanding was, aside from the ones that Kamsa killed, there was number 7 was a miscarriage. So no mention is made, but that's okay. So now let's go back to text 23 to help us understand text. Will help us understand text 29. Text 23. There we go. My dear brother Nanda Maharaj. Now we're going to spend a little bit of time how to understand why he's addressing Nanda Maharaj as brother, because they're not. But it's sensible. We'll hear. At an advanced age, you had no son at all, and were hopeless of having one. Therefore, that you now have a son is a sign of good fortune. Well, he made, as far as Vasudeva was concerned, it was his son, and he made the arrangement, so it really wasn't good. The good fortune was Vasudeva brought him a son, although he had a daughter. In the purport, Prabhupada's purport, Vasudeva knew that Yashoda had given birth to a female child, whom Vasudeva had stolen and replaced with a male child. This was a great mystery, and Vasudeva wanted to determine whether this mystery was already known to Nanda Maharaj. On inquiring, however, he was confident that the mystery of Krishna's birth and his being placed in the care of Yashoda was still hidden, and that comes with text 29. It was confirmed by Nanda. There was no danger, since Kamsa at least could not learn what had already happened. Now, Nanda and Vasudeva and Devaki, they knew. And they were tight-lipped. They didn't disclose to anyone. Later it became known. But they didn't disclose to anyone. For protection of Krishna, out of fear of Kamsa, because he's a wicked person. Now, how this understanding of my dear brother Nanda Maharaj is to be properly understood. So to help us understand, I'm going to read something directly drawn from translation of Gopal Champu. Gopal Champu is a book written by Jiva Goswami describing the 2 months when Krishna, after killing Dhenukasura, he went to Vrindavan and spent 2 months with the residents of Vrindavan. He promised to return. He was a little late, but he returned. And while there, Gopal Champu was describing 2 disciples of Narada Muni, named Madhukanta and Snigdhakanta. They are requested by Nanda Maharaj and the Brijvasis at the palace of Nanda Maharaj to narrate Krishna's pastimes, as Narada has helped them understand, and so they start describing Krishna's pastimes in sequence. This is Gopal Champu's backdrop, or the context. So when Madhukanta and Snigdhakanta are discussing the interaction, just this very interaction between Vasudeva and Nanda on the occasion of Nanda coming to, shortly after Krishna's birth, to pay his taxes as well as give some gift to Kamsa. Nanda left Krishna in charge, in the care of his elder brother, Upananda, and other very trusted senior members in Braja, while he went to do his religious duty, his legal duty of paying taxes, but his religious duty of giving some charity to the king. Now, he didn't want to give direct charity to the king because he knew Kamsa was wicked, but he did it indirectly. So his religious duty was performed. And Vasudeva, he didn't go see Vasudeva. He didn't go see Vasudeva because he knew Vasudeva was under the vigilant watch of Kamsa. So he didn't want to put Krishna at risk by going and visiting Vasudeva. So he didn't. Vasudeva came to know, and rather than going during the daytime, he went in the dead of night. Vasudeva, with an assistant, snuck in the dead of night to the place where Nanda Maharaj was staying, and that's when they had this discussion, Nanda and Vasudeva. And so in Gopal Champu, this is being narrated, and I'm going to read two sections. The language used by Jiva Goswami is Kanda instead of Canto, but in the Uttara Kanda section of Gopal Champu, we're going to hear some language expressed by Madhukanta that the cowherd community was known as Abhira. Now there's different meanings of Abhira, but in this context it's made clear. It's their profession of being cowherds. They're not forest dwellers, although they live in Vrindavan forest. Their occupation is they tend cows. That's their quality, their characteristic. We two messengers, that's Snigdhakanta Madhukanta. We two messengers have thought about this and have come to this conclusion. Your maternal grandfather, so that's maternal grandfather. Who's the maternal grandfather? No, Parjanya Maharaj is the father of Nanda, and Parjanya Maharaj had a wife, but from the mother's side, his maternal grandfather, that's the father of Parjanya. Who's the father of Parjanya? Deva Mida was of the Vaishya Abhira lineage. Your paternal grandfather, Devamida, Vasudeva's grandfather also was very famous in that great assembly. So this is the two, Snigdhakanta Madhukanta speaking to Nanda. And there's a little footnote. Devamida had two wives, a Kshatriya wife and a Vaishya wife. Shura or Shurasena was the son, one son, from the Kshatriya wife, and Shura's son was Vasudeva. On the other hand, Parjanya was the son of Devamida's Vaishya wife. Parjanya's son was Nanda. He had 4 brothers also. So Nanda and Vasudeva. Nanda and Vasudeva were brothers because they had the same father, Devamida. They had different mothers, but they had the same father, so they're brothers. Now, Nanda was the son of Parjanya, and Krishna was the son of Vasudeva and Devaki. So let's go back. Krishna's identity as a Yadu is shown in verses like from Skanda Purana. I lifted Govardhan Hill for the benefit of the Yadus. For the benefit of the Yadus. So he's simultaneously the son of Vasudeva and Devaki. Thus, he lifted Govardhan Hill in Vrindavan for the benefit of the Yadus. So he's in the Yadu clan because of his father Vasudeva. But because of his father Nanda, he's in a different grouping. And now he's speaking to Nanda for these two. The knowers of the Puranas emphasize the connection between the two brothers, Shura and Parjanya, like this. In verse 20 of this chapter 5, Nanda, the brother of Vasudeva, came and listened. Nanda, the brother of Vasudeva, came and listened. That's text 20 from this chapter 5. In the scriptures, here's some technical things. In the scriptures, dealing with real identity, by predominance of the father's side, the child becomes a Kshatriya, exhibiting courage. So Vasudeva was the father. Krishna exhibited courage. He was considered Kshatriya. But according to the opinion of Dharma Shastra, the son becomes mixed caste, following after the mother, where the caste of the mother and father are different. So the son takes on the varna of the mother. So Devamira had a Vaishya wife. According to Jiva Goswami, her name was Vaishya Devi. Devamita had a Vaishya wife, and so the son born of them, according to Dharma Shastra, takes on the Varna of the mother, a Vaishya. So Parjanya became known as a Vaishya, although his father was a Kshatriya. So we have two different standards. One that goes by the father, the one that goes by the mother, if it's a mixed marriage. Thus, the authorities have established that you, that's Nanda, have the nature of the Vaishya Abhiras, cowherds. Anyway, now your son gives bliss to the Yadus and is worshipped by the world because of extraordinary powers. His present identity as a Kshatriya is approved by the wise. It's by his quality, not by his birth. But this is not actually connected to his being of Kshatriya birth. I hope that's clear. If there's questions, you can ask the questions at the end. I'm going to continue because there's another section from Gopal Champu that speaks to this relationship between Nanda and Vasudeva, because that's what's going on. It's a meeting of the two. So this is from the first Champu of Gopal Champu, chapter 3. And the way it's written, it says, story begins. Quote, now the narrators of this are Snigdhakanta, Madhukanta. Doesn't say which one. The famous Vrishni dynasty is described in the Vedas, Puranas, and other scriptures. The dynasty's crowning garland, who was named Sri Devamita, and who was the abode of great virtue, resided in the city of Mathura. He was the crest jewel of all religious persons. He had 2 wives. His first wife was a Kshatriya, and his second wife was a Vaishya. Now, in an earlier purport, we heard Nanda was older. So though his second wife was Vaishya, she gave the first birth. These 2 wives each bore a son. The sons were Shura and Parjanya. From Shura, Vasudeva and other sons were born, following the injunction, quote, one accepts the caste of one's mother, unquote. Parjanya became a Vaishya. That's the Dharma Shastra rule. He, Parjanya, was the master of many cows. he made his home in Brihadvana. Brihadvana. From childhood, he worshipped the Brahmanas. He showered on them all they desired. He was affectionate to the Vaishnavas. He followed the Vedas. For his whole life, he worshipped Lord Hari. Accepting his mother's caste, he became famous and glorious as the crowning garland of the Vaishnavas. So that was his father as well, Devamita, the dynasty's crowning garland. According to the definition given by wise pundits, he became an excellent cowherd, a master of many cows. Then it gives a definition of cowherd. The definition of a cowherd, that's this abhira word, is given in these words of Manu Samhita. This is right within Gopal Champu. Quote, the child of a Brahmana father and an Ugra mother, born of a Kshatriya and a Shudra, accepts the subcaste known as Avrita. The child of a Brahmana father and a Anambhasta mother, or born of a Vaishya, accepts the subcaste known as Abhira, or cowherd. Manu Samhita. The child of a Brahmana father and a Ayogavi mother, that's born of a Shudra father, and a Vaishya mother, accepts the subcaste known as Diggana. That's Manu Samhita. Continuing with Gopal Champu. In another place, it is said, quote, an Ambasta is a person born from a Brahmana father and a Vaishya mother. In the Padma Purana, in the beginning of the Shrishti Kanda, it is said that a Brahmana who performs a yajna may be in a situation where he accepts as a wife the daughter of the Gopa, for whom he performed the yajna. This kind of Gopa dynasty will be seen in Krishna's pastimes. This is clearly explained in the Shrishti Kanda. In this way, the acceptance of the twice-born Vaishya caste is explained. Now that's kind of like a sidebar where Snigdhakanta, Madhukanta are assessing what's the proper terminology to identify Nanda, because they're speaking to Nanda. So they're referring to Shastra that says how he's to be identified. Then in his heart, Snigdhakanta thought, quote, some people may doubt that Krishna was a twice-born Vaishya. In Srimad Bhagavatam 10.8.10, that's the name-giving ceremony, Gargamuni giving Krishna and Balaram their names. 10.8.10. King Nanda tells Gargamuni, quote, please perform the purifying process of Krishna's second birth. And then later, chapter 24 of Canto 10, Lord Krishna also tells King Nanda. This is the preliminary to the Govardhan Leela, where he's stopping the inter-yajna. The proper duty of the Vaishya community is agriculture, trade, and the protection of the cows. We belong to the Vaishya community, and our proper duty is to farm or to trade with agricultural produce, to protect cows, or take the banking, unquote. Interesting, take the banking. Srila Shukadev Goswami described the cowherd people's home in these words in Srimad Bhagavatam. Every residential house in Vrindavan was decorated for the worship of the sun god and the fire god and for reception of guests, cows, brahmanas, and demigods. Every home was illuminated by light and incense, arranged for sanctification. On the other hand, Vidura, although born as a Shudra, became, because of his activities, more than a Brahmana. Now it's flipping back to, this is Jiva Goswami giving these words credit to Snigdhakanta, Madhukanta, but assessing how is someone's position to be understood. Speaking to Nanda. In the case of Vidura, although his birth was X, his qualification was something else. Snigdhakanta then said, then what? Then what? Madhukanta said, because he was very kind and good, Parjanya became an extraordinary Vaishya. Now again, they're speaking to Nanda and explaining his descent and what his gotra is, what his varna is. Parjanya became an extraordinary Vaishya. That is not surprising. Protecting his home area, being always kind and generous to others, and giving in charity a flooding ocean of milk, he was glorious like a monsoon cloud. He was glorious like Prahlad, true to his promise like Dhruva, and magnificent like Prithu. To his enemies, he was like Bhishma. To his friends, he was like Lord Shiva. He was exalted like Lord Brahma, and effulgent and powerful like Lord Hari himself. He was filled with a great host of virtues. Many thousands of gopas and their Brahmana priests took shelter of him. Seeing his host of virtues, and seeing that he was the Tilak mark and king of the cowherd people, King Ugrasena and others in the Yadu dynasty greatly honored him. His 5 sons, headed by Upananda, delighted the world. So all of that was to help us understand. And our acharyas say they're not exactly brothers, but it's not inappropriate to say brothers at the same time. And just a little bit of sharing. They're brothers because they came from, they're descendants of Devamira. So in that sense, they're brothers because they're descendants from the same grandfather. In that sense, they're brothers. And I don't know if any of you have been curious and taken notice that when discussing Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada would often say Arjuna didn't want to kill his brothers. He didn't say his cousins. Sometimes he said cousins. But primarily he said brothers. Now, did Prabhupada make a mistake? Prabhupada did make a mistake. So how do we understand his saying brothers? Because of their family relation, they were like brothers. They had different fathers, Pandu and Dhritarashtra, but from the same grandfather, and therefore brothers. And another explanation of brothers is like Chaitanya and Nityananda. They're brothers. Now they're eternal brothers, but their affection was like brothers, and so they're just the 2 brothers. So Vedic culture has different rules and different ways by which we can identify something. I'm spending all this time because at least, somebody that's brought up in America and doesn't know nothing about nothing with Vedic culture, all of these are very interesting, and it's a kind of appreciation of the subtleties of how terminology is used. You can say one of the most important things between Vasudeva and Devaki between Vasudeva and Nanda was their affection. Aside from their grandfather was the same grandfather and so forth. They're brothers because of their affection. They're brothers because of that ancestry. They're brothers of kind. And again, our Acharya's comment, it was not inappropriate for him to speak of Nanda as his brother, my dear brother. Perfectly appropriate. It's poetic, it's rasa, but it's even, perfectly appropriate. So back to the main point here, the mystery. Vasudeva is quite concerned. Kamsa is wicked. And he's quite diplomatic. Vasudeva is quite diplomatic. He was diplomatic enough to persuade wicked Kamsa to not kill his sister and, and the circumstances on her marriage, etc., etc., etc. He was very expert in diplomacy. So diplomacy has a negative connotation. Diplomacy has its place in service to Krishna also, when it's done properly. It's usually not done properly. But he wants Krishna's protection. That's one of his primary concerns. The father wants protection of the son. He's the father of the personality of Godhead. He wants protection of Krishna. So he's speaking in ways that he's examining to see, is the mystery possibly going to circulate around and Kamsa will hear it. Now we know later, Narada Muni lets the cat out of the bag, explicitly. He says, guess what? You've served me very nicely. I want to tell you a little secret. You know that 8th child of Devaki? That the prophecy, the voice from the sky that said the 8th child will kill you. Well, guess what? Vasudeva took that 8th child to the other side of the river Jamuna and placed him in the care of Nanda Maharaj. That's the 8th child. Now, why did he do that? Immediately, reflex. Kamsa reached for his sword and was ready to, I'm going to go kill Vasudeva. He lied to me. No, Narada was also expert. No. Vasudeva isn't going to harm you. It's that 8th child of Devaki. Watch your backside, Kamsa. Go for it. Go get him. Because Nanda knew Krishna can't be killed. And Narada knew. And Narada wanted to hasten Krishna's pastimes of killing the demons, which is why he came into this world. And he's having too much fun over there in Vrindavan. And so we have to get him out of Vrindavan to come and kill the demons that were burdening the earth. Now, fortunately, Kamsa sent some of them, but there's a whole lot more. And Narada wanted to see that. So he did what he did. He let the cat out of the bag. Whereas Vasudeva didn't. Because he's the father. And although he saw the four-arm form of Krishna and he offered prayers at Devaki that he is the personality of Godhead, his parental affection got the better of him. He was not thinking Krishna can hold his own because he's the personality of Godhead. No problem. Let Kamsa go try to get him. Nothing's going to happen. His parental affection was still very strong. Imagine these differences of emotion in the heart of Vasudeva as he's having this conversation with Nanda, his dear friend and brother. We did a switcheroo with his child and Nanda's child. Hearing that Nanda's thinking that 8th child was killed and went to heaven. What feelings must Vasudeva be having? It doesn't disclose, Vasudeva felt this, that, or the other thing, but we can understand he's a Vaishnav, he's a pure Vaishnav. So overriding everything, of course, is Yogamaya potency, so he doesn't mess up the Krishna's pastimes. And he doesn't disturb the mood of love of Nanda. And the divinity of Krishna later comes when Devaki requests Krishna, after coming back from his school with Sandipani Muni, hearing that he brought to life the son of Sandipani Muni. She wants, can you bring back my sons too? So they have this very fascinating mix of understanding Krishna's divinity and seeing Krishna as their son. I mean, enough that they send him off to school. He's our son. He's 12 years old. He hasn't gone to school yet. Let's hurry up and get his Upanayana and then send him off to school. So he's like their son. And then he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And at different times they move back and forth between those different moods to suit their mood and to accommodate Krishna's pastimes at the same time. So this internal potency of Krishna is very fascinating. And of course, Krishna reciprocates with the mood of love of each devotee. And Vasudeva and Devaki have a very special role to play, and they have a very special mood, and he reciprocates. And it facilitates his pastimes. But Nanda's is most exalted. Nanda and Jasoda's mood is most exalted. They only see one thing. He's our son. And they have all those affections that go with being parents of a small boy that does mischief and encounters demons, and who can imagine their affections, their feelings? But this is Krishna's pastimes. He's churning the transcendental love of his devotees through his form and qualities and pastimes. And, we're at a distance from their position, hearing about their love and their experiences and their feelings and how they relate with one another and how they're assisting Krishna in everything that he wants. This is our Srimad Bhagavatam, churning loving attraction for Krishna. So let's see if there's some discussion.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. We are gone into the deep history of these two brothers. We didn't know this before. Thank you very much for bringing how it is. Thank you. And I open up to Jai Govinda Prabhu, our director and ex-temple president here. He will.
There he is, Jai Govinda.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj. It's so nice to have your darshan again and to hear how Krishna conscious you are. I mean, the clarity and the memory and substantiating. We've actually been reading this section for some time now, each verse. And the idea of Krishna's brother being, not Krishna's brother, but Vasudeva and Nanda being brothers. And you elaborated it on it so expertly, taking evidence from Jiva Goswami. Because we've been studying this, you may or may not be aware, but in a previous purport, a few verses back, I think it's text, it is text 20. I'm not sure if you read the purport. But Vasudeva, I know you read the purport at some time, but in preparation for this class, I'm not sure if you read the purport.
I did.
It says that Vasudeva and Nanda Maharaj were intimately connected, and they lived like brothers. Furthermore, it is learned from the notes of Sripad Madhvacharya that Vasudeva and Nanda Maharaj were stepbrothers. And you elaborated on that and confirmed that with the Jiva Goswami's Gopal Champu, and made it very, very clear. Although at the same time, it was a little difficult to actually follow everything. Which brings me to the point.
Jai Govinda, I'll send you a document that has notes on what I was reading from, and you can make it available to the other Prabhus on this call, or you can, let somebody do it. So
Okay.
you can look at it carefully. And I did read text 20, but I didn't repeat it because it just amplified in more detail from Gopal Champu.
Okay. So excuse my my offense for mentioning that. Should have realized.
No,
It's not meant as an instruction, Maharaj. It's just that I was listening to your class very intently.
you have to.
You can see when you hear these things, and you can really see why the concept of birth being so prominent in the Hindu Indian culture, because they put so much emphasis on it. This birth, that birth, pratiloma, this, that, and every other thing. So where does it actually leave us? Coming from the West, coming from who knows what our gotra is, what our lineage, what our birth is.
I got it. More? Okay, that's it.
That's it, Maharaj.
Okay. We're Aborigines by birth, or according to Shastra, less than Shudra by birth. But so the Dharma Shastra is what was being referred to specifically, and where persons who are not in the bhakti process, I'll say it again, persons not in the bhakti process, then these other considerations are the considerations by which they function. Not the bhakti process, but the material considerations. And for those who are living by material considerations and not the bhakti process, that's what you live by. Those who are dharmic live by them. That's what Dharma Shastra is for. And so where does it leave us? We can just wipe our brow and say with folded palms, thank you, Srila Prabhupada, because you brought us to the bhakti process where all those things are like, quite confusing and a little bit abstract and maybe even gibberish from our perspective, because it really is not relevant to our lives. What's relevant to our lives is the bhakti process. And the bhakti process takes us in the elevator, not by the stairway, to the position of becoming a Vaishnava, because those dharmic processes are meant to bring one to the position of being a devotee of Vishnu. Say it again. Those dharmic processes are meant to bring one to the position of becoming a devotee of Vishnu. Indirectly, but that's there in the process. And so if you become quickly, by mercy of Srila Prabhupada and disciplic succession, involved in the bhakti process, then that's behind you and it doesn't have the same relevance. We don't dismiss it like it goes in the garbage can, but it's not relevant to us. Back to your question, how does this pertain to us? It doesn't. It's for persons who don't have the bhakti process. So what do? It's good to be familiar with it because it's there in the Bhagavatam, as we're seeing. However, it's there so we can understand what the backdrop is. Just like there's a camera in front of me, and here's a nice white sheet, and behind that is another orange sheet, and that's the backdrop. So those things are like the backdrop behind the bhakti process for those that don't know the bhakti process. The dharmic people follow those things, and it's very important to them. And for those that are following the bhakti process, it's something behind us. We're focused on the bhakti process. And with that, one more thing. With that comes a great responsibility, because the dharmic process helps people become pious in the true sense of material piety. And in contrast, our lives is impious. We're, Aborigines that don't have the kind of piety that issues from those that follow Dharma strictly. So we have a handicap, and we have to recognize that handicap and be very careful adherents to the bhakti process as it's given to us by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Rupa Goswami, and his followers. We're to be proper followers of the standards of the bhakti process, minimally. That's where we are in relation to all of these things.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. Very, very clear and nice answer.
Hare Krishna.
Anyone else in the Zoom line?
Damodar Prabhu has a question. I have a question about Varna Shankara. As a teacher in public school, I feel like I have to deal with lots of Varna Shankara problems. How can I improve my attitude in this regard? I feel that I am judging.
Well, how can you improve your attitude? 2 or 3 things. Recognize that we're products of mercy. And to whatever degree you or any one of us may have had good upbringing, count your blessings and don't be judgmental of those that have not. Be as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was, or think of Srila Prabhupada as Prabhupada saw the Western people from, being a cultured gentleman and Vaishnava. What did he see? So, think of Prabhupada and be a follower of Prabhupada and be very patient. Not overlooking when Varna Sankara behavior is being exhibited, but be quite tolerant and know where it's important to draw the line. And where it's important to draw the line has a lot to do with the relationship with an individual who is from a Varna Sankara background. You may draw some lines, but even with that, what did Prabhupada do? He didn't even give the 4 regular principles until people asked him for it. You know that story. So, Prabhupada, should we be following some rules? Yes. Tomorrow. So then he wrote the 4 regular principles. They didn't even hear them before, because it was just, the mercy of Prabhupada being bestowed freely and liberally. So those are people that wanted to hear from him. There's maybe, Varna Sankara people that don't want to hear from a Vaishnava. And so you just be accepting of that's one of the hallmarks of Kali Yuga, and persons who are victims of Kali Yuga. We wish well for them, and depending upon the relationship you have with such a person, you interact with them in a way that's bestowing Lord Chaitanya and disciplic succession mercy upon them without getting negatively impacted or contaminated by that unwholesome association. Keep your attention on Lord Chaitanya as the distributor of mercy, and you'll be in a safe position, and you'll also have some better intelligence how to help them.
Damodar wants to say thank you, Maharaj, for this thing. Anyone else?
Maharaj, I have a question about the Varnas and all the things that you explained about Nanda Maharaj, and it looks like there is a heavy dependence on the birth in order to classify a Varna. Also, although Krishna mentions it is guna and karma which defines a Varna. So how to understand these two?
I'm not sure what your question is, because the family that you take birth in is related to guna and karma. Janma is related to guna and karma. It's not totally disconnected from karma. One takes birth in a certain family, that's janma, due to karma and guna, particularly karma, but not, also guna, the modes of nature, which family. Again, back to Jai Govinda's question, our position is we want to understand how people during Vedic times functioned, and most importantly, we want to understand the real qualification is not any of those, guna, karma, or janma. The real qualification is connecting through bhakti process with transcendence. And that's, descending mercy and a willingness to receive and act accordingly. It's, the detail, the volumes and volumes and volumes of detail of Dharma Shastra is something I really haven't had an interest or time to wade through. It's good to have some understanding of it because there's the context in which Vedic times was operating. So to get a basic understanding, fine. But our primary saving grace and path forward is not upon those considerations, guna and karma and janma. It's descending mercy and the eagerness to receive it and act upon it, apply it in our lives. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Maharaj, very much. I appreciate the answer. Thank you.
Manu, can I go next?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for your nice class, Maharaj. This is Janki Jivan Das. Maharaj, first of all, when we see pure devotee like you, we get so much energy that it keeps us going for at least few days. So thank you for giving your association to us. And my question is, Maharaj, when we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, it teaches us mainly we need to have selfless intentions.
Need to have what?
Maharaj,
Selfless intention.
yes, which is mainly the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. But how can we understand this in a deeper meaning when Nanda Maharaj saw Vasudev and Vasudev is showing happiness? So how do we inherit similar qualities in our day-to-day life so that when we meet the different devotees, we show our happiness? So how do we inherit these qualities on a regular basis?
I think you just answered your own question, but I'll repeat back the answer to your question by repeating what you said. One of the fruits of the Bhagavatam is we're associating with pure devotees of the Lord. And by association of pure devotees of the Lord, we develop qualities like those with whom we associate. Just by sound, we are not so likely to get a chance to be by the side of Nanda and Vasudev when they're meeting together, etc. But by sound, we can get that benefit. And so you and me and all of us, through the medium of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we can associate with such elevated persons. And of course, it's going to impact back to your, the selfless intention point. It's going to come through the association benefit of sound will come through more or less depending upon, the contaminations of heart, and contrastingly, our eagerness to go beyond those contaminations of heart. That's that selfless intention. It's like clouds in the sky, and the sun blocks the clouds in the sky. Right now, where I am, there's lots of sunshine. but yesterday there was lots of clouds. So the same sun is in the sky yesterday, today. But the light of the Bhagavad will come into our hearts more if there's an intention, just like you're describing, the intention of going beyond selfishness. Then you can get the qualities like Nanda and Vasudev just by, Nanda and Vasudev just by hearing about them. Now, how gracious and how elegant and how affection-filled are their exchanges. It's not normal. People today, Haribol Prabhu, how's things? Or something. Anyway, they're very sophisticated and very refined. And then through the association of such persons, we can become like them, depending upon the intention, just as your very question raises, the intention of selflessness. It's going to come through more. We'll get their association through sound.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you for nicely explained. Thank you, Maharaj.
We've gone over an hour. Who's our timekeeper here?
With you, Maharaj, time never comes in between, Maharaj. As you say, in the spiritual world, there is no absence of time.
Oh, that was very clever. That was really clever.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Raj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. My humble obeisances to you, Maharaj. Very nice class, first of all, of course. I loved how you started that history is chronological, but Puranas are transcendently chronological. So that was such a beautiful line to understand more Srimad Bhagavatam, which we read every day. Of course, thanks for that chronological, relationship that you explained, because it's been a few days, if not a couple of weeks, that every day the point will divert on the relation of Nanda Maharaj and Vasudev. I love your website, actually, how you explained, beautifully explained, actually, the relation between Jesus and Muhammad and Nityananda Prabhu and Haridas Thakur. Thank you so much for that nice explanation over there. In the very last line, when you said Yashoda was loving Krishna because of her as his child, of course, every mother and father, child is everything for them. I was relating to it. Yeah, it's so transcendental, we want to love Krishna with our soul. Soul is his part. But of course, everything starts from the home. Starts from the kids, from the parents, and everybody around you, Vaishnavas. Start respecting them and loving them, and hopefully the soul will reach to Krishna. Thank you so much. Thank you for your nice class.
I see that Dawn Leah's hand is up. I believe she has a question to ask.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for such a wonderful class. I just have a really quick question. In both the text and the purport, it says that that your daughter, Vasudev's daughter, entered the heavenly planets. Does that mean that she's left her body?
The transmission of sound was really crummy, so I couldn't hear everything. Did anybody in the room understand? There's several of us in the room, and could you repeat it slowly, articulate clearly, because the transmission of your voice and our system is not good. Try again.
In both the text and the purport,
Yeah.
it says that Vasudev's daughter has gone to the heavenly planet.
Yeah.
Does that mean she's left her body?
That was the understanding of Nanda Maharaj. But Yogamaya doesn't have a material body to lose. So that was the understanding of the people in Braja. The eighth child, from the Braja folks' perspective, the eighth child was a girl, And Kamsa killed the girl, and the girl went to heaven. But there is no body to be destroyed. The fact of the matter is, Yogamaya has no body. So that was just their, how they understood what happened. But that's not what happened. She didn't go to heaven. She's Yogamaya. And then there's a further detail that Yogamaya can be transferred or transformed into the external energy, Durga. So the internal energy, by Lord's arrangement, acts as the external energy, or the reflection of the internal energy. Okay?
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Sure. We're having a technology problem over here. The battery went to sleep.
It is saying that the camera became hot, so that's why it's taking cooling down.
No, it was the battery went to sleep. So here we are. Back again.
Thank you.
So are we done?
Looks like.
I think we're done.
Yeah. No other questions or comments in the Zoom line? Okay. Thank you very, very much, Maharaj, on behalf of our new Gokul Dham. This is Manudas, so-called servant leader of the temple, temple president. I really, really appreciate you coming. Since many months I was requesting Nanda Gopal Prabhu, please bring your good Maharaja to us. So thank you for accepting and blessing all of us. On behalf of everybody, we want to chant 3 times for your good health, happiness and peace to preach like this to more and more people. Let's chant 3 times, please. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Haribo.
Swami Maharaj ki jai.
Exit.
Hare Krishna.
What? Another time, tomorrow morning.